Hey, what's up guys? I hope we are all fantastic. I have another top 10 movie video for you guys today. I've already covered Van Damme and Stallone and Snipes and Schwarzenegger and Statham. In this video, I'm breaking down another action genre legend, Dolph Lundgren. Now, Lundgren has spent much of his 5-decade spanning career in the straight-to-video action market, but he's headlined some great movies, some iconic films, and he's proven to be just as capable as a hero as he is a villain. So, with that said, let's get into my top 10 movies from the collection of Dolph Lundgren. Kicking this list off is a great sequel to a thus far compelling spin-off. At number 10, I have Creed 2 from 2018, starring Michael B. Jordan, along with Stallone and Thompson and Montianu and Dolph Lundgren, reprising his role that made him a star, Ivan Drago, as he comes back to train his son in preparation for a title fight against Adonis Creed and his trainer, Rocky Balboa.
My son will break your boy. A long day.
Now, admittedly, Lundgren doesn't have a ton of screen time in this film, but I think what he does get leaves its impression. He really stepped back into this role that made him a star with ease to sell this crucial story layer. He really captured the broken and aging Drago to reveal a heartbreaking story of his life post-Rocky IV. His scenes with Rocky were just nostalgic and searing with intensity, and his chemistry with Montianu was just what this movie needed to sell that Creed-Drago showdown as the emotional climactic battle that it needed to be. Next up at number 9, I have a solid martial arts action thriller starring Tony Jaa, Ron Perlman, Michael Jai White, Peter Weller, and Dolph Lundgren as a New York detective who travels to Southeast Asia and teams with a Thai detective to track down the gangster that killed his family. I think this is a bit of an underrated straight-to-video actioner. Despite having a bit of a messy plotline, Lundgren, Jaa, and White give this movie a buffet of violent, adrenaline-pumping fights and action to keep the pace moving. Sure, Jaa and White steal the show in the action department, but Lundgren does have plenty to do. It keeps a fast pace, there's just enough story to invest in, and the fight choreography and the direction blend nicely to result in more than capable action sequences for this flick. Dolph Lundgren was the lone headlining star of my number 8 pick when he filled the role of Marvel Comics' Frank Castle in 1989's The Punisher, also starring Louis Gossett Jr. This was a dark and violent take on the origin story that sees Castle hunt down those that killed his family and wages a war on crime. Now, admittedly, this isn't a fantastic film, but I do think it's got some redeeming qualities to it. There's a decent amount of action and killing, which is always a good time, and Lundgren's flexing his martial arts skills. It's the traditional Castle origin story blended with the Mafia and the Yakuza, and despite Lundgren being a bit stiff in the role, I think him in the middle of it all, taking out bad guys, gives the film some solid moments of appeal. It's not gratuitously violent, but still ominous and gritty, with Gossett Jr. sort of being the shining light for this small budget comic book movie that came out the same year as Batman and just got steamrolled. Moving along to my number 7 pick, I have probably the most epic of the movies on this list, Sylvester Stallone's 2010 all-star action flick, The Expendables, starring Lundgren and Statham and Lee and Austin and Cruise and Rourke and Willis and more as a group of mercenaries set out to take down a dictator and a corrupt CIA agent played by 80s legend Eric Roberts.
Insect.
I think I could really just include all of the Expendables movies for this selection. The character arc for Lundgren's gunner does have a nice flow throughout the 3 films, and Lundgren certainly does hold his own among the action genre heavyweights from the past. I think he delivers some great lines, has some impressionable moments, he's got some great kills and spots of humor as well, and I mean, with all the famous faces in this franchise, Lundgren has been a subtle mainstay along there with Stallone and Statham. Next up at number 6 is just a childhood favorite of mine, the over-the-top and eccentric Johnny Mnemonic from 1995. Keanu Reeves stars in this one as a data courier that must transport some sensitive material that could kill him, as many people are intent on acquiring this data, like the Yakuza and a massive man known as the Street Preacher, played by Dolph Lundgren.
And who is this lost soul, this sinner unrepentant?
I would easily consider this to be the most underrated performance of Lundgren's career. Johnny Mnemonic is just strange and unorthodox and just bizarre, and you could tell that Lundgren gets it. He plays the eccentric street preacher, a man portraying Jesus that's also an assassin. He nearly steals the film with his sadistic performance and delivers a string of comical lines. You can tell, I think he's just soaking it in and just having fun, and he gives this movie the vibrant villain that it needed. Reaching the middle of this list at number 5 is probably the most nostalgic film on this list for me, the wildest one on this list as well, I am sure. 1987's Masters of the Universe, directed by Gary Goddard. Here, Lundgren wields the sword and has the power of He-Man, with Frank Langella, Meg Foster, and Courtney Cox filling out the cast of this just heavily flawed but still delightful adaptation. Now, this movie has so many flaws and issues, it's tough to know where to start, but I still watched it countless times as a kid, and I think Dolph Lundgren was a fantastic He-Man. I think he really did the best he could with the hammy material and the ridiculous Earth-set plotline, but I mean, the 80s vibe and atmosphere of this movie is strong and appealing and loaded with nostalgia, and sure, it may be a terrible He-Man movie, but it's still a charming 80s sci-fi fantasy adventure. Now, my number 4 pick is just a classic from the 90s, Universal Soldier from 1992, directed by Roland Emmerich, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme, who rivaled Lundgren here as soldiers brought back to life to become super soldiers, where Lundgren goes rogue with only Van Damme in the way of stopping his rampage. This is a certified Van Damme flick from top to bottom, but it would not be as great as it is without Lundgren as the villain. He's menacing and bold and just maniacal. He's the true wild card for this film. He gives Van Damme a run for his money. He really delivers some sinister relentlessness, some great lines, plenty of cool kills and violent action. And I mean, when this movie came out, seeing Van Damme and Lundgren together on the screen was like two heavyweights going at it. And all these years later, I think this movie still provides that. Up next at number 3 is just an iconic 80s movie, Rocky IV from 1985, written, directed by, and starring Sylvester Stallone, where Lundgren filled the intimidating shoes of the deadly Russian fighter Ivan Drago. This was the springboard film for Lundgren, and he turned this character into a legendary villain that killed Creed and just really took Stallone to the limit.
I must break you.
I think it's safe to say that Lundgren, in his performance as Ivan Drago in Rocky IV, cemented himself in the franchise's legacy with minimal dialogue. His presence alone and his in-ring domination, I think, just made him a legendary villain. I think he was a beast in this movie. His strength, his size, and his speed were just intimidating and impressive to see, but I think where Lundgren made Drago shine was through his eyes and his expressions. I think these moments that really were the ones that brought the buildup of tension to a peak, and I think it's solely due to Lundgren's raw performance. Moving along to my number 2 pick, I have a fun little sci-fi action thriller that I've always grown up knowing as I Come in Peace. Most countries may know it as Dark Angel. It's from 1990, directed by Craig R. Baxley. Lundgren headlined this one as the rogue cop who pairs with a by-the-book FBI agent to bring down an alien drug dealer.
I win.
Fuck you, spaceman.
Now this movie, despite all its over-the-top ridiculousness, actually does deliver an out-of-the-box plot. Alien drug dealers who kill with CDs is a delightfully hammy plot, and it absolutely works. Lundgren is front and center here, pulling a bit of a Martin Riggs impression as he battles this massive alien. He's kicking ass and saving the day and delivering some textbook action movie dialogue along the way. It's fast-paced, it's loaded with action, and its unique plot progression I think still feels refreshing today. And coming in at number 1, my personal favorite Dolph Lundgren movie, another childhood favorite of mine, Showdown in Little Tokyo from 1991, directed by Mark L. Lester. Here Lundgren co-starred alongside the late Brandon Lee as a couple of LA cops who forced to work together to take on the vicious Yakuza led by Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa to uphold justice and to protect a beautiful witness played by Tia Carrere.
Kenner, just in case we get killed, I wanted to tell you. You have the biggest dick I've ever seen on a man.
Thanks.
Now this is just one of those oddly amazing flicks from the very early 90s that's also kind of like an 80s movie that absolutely knew what it was. Lundgren and Lee are a fantastic pair. Their rapport, their chemistry, and just balance of personality types is flawless throughout this film. It's hammy and just amusing, but also adrenaline pumping and action filled. This movie just, I think, has a charming atmosphere, making it really feel like an 80s actioner. And Lee and Lundgren taking on the Yakuza is a treat. Tagawa is fantastic as the villain. He really sells the sadistic crime boss mentality perfectly without being too overly cartoonish. It has a lot of great action that you can have fun with, comical dialogue, and Tia Carrere. Lundgren and Lee are your typical action duo, but they really do make this 90s classic their own. And that's my video for today, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this look back at the career of Dolph Lundgren. Let me know what some of your favorite Lundgren movies are down in the comments. Don't forget to check out some of the other past episodes of my top 10 videos. I also have my top 100 movies of the 80s series that I'm working on if you guys haven't caught that yet. Also, let me know who you might like to see covered in a future episode. And until then, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you at the movies.